But we begin this hour at the Kennedy Center here in Washington, D.C., where Donald Trump's name is in the process of being removed from the exterior of the iconic performing arts venue. A crew was busy throughout the night. Here's a photo of one letter being removed. The crew left shortly before 4 a.m. Eastern, and the work remains shrouded by a tarp. It comes as a federal appeals court rejected a last-ditch attempt yesterday by Trump and his Kennedy Center-appointed board to keep his name above that of the late President John F. Kennedy. I should also point out that this is also a memorial. It was one of two big legal losses for Trump yesterday as a different federal judge extended an indefinite block on Trump's $1.776 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund. In her decision yesterday, Judge Leonie Brinkema cited acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's unwillingness to formally rescind the order in writing, as well as Trump's continued public push for the fund. The judge said she would consider rescinding her order if the DOJ submits a sworn written declaration under penalty of perjury signed by acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Associate Attorney General Stanley Woodward, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that the administration is not moving forward with the fund. She has given them until next Friday to act. When asked for comment, the DOJ simply reaffirmed that there is no fund, as Blanche had testified. There is no indication, however, on whether they will submit the written declaration as requested. Joining us now, Skye Perryman, President and CEO of Democracy Forward, which represented the plaintiffs in the case, and Ankush Gadori, former federal prosecutor. All right, Skye. Please explain how extraordinary it is for a judge to tell the acting Attorney General of the United States, basically, I so don't believe you. I need you to put in writing that you will follow my order.
Well, look, I mean, it's extraordinary, but what's really extraordinary is the fact that the acting Attorney General would go to Congress and make statements to Congress and then will not make those statements under penalty of perjury before a court. Like, we should not normalize that type of deception and corruption that we're seeing. And the court was right yesterday to grant our client's request to continue to keep the fund blocked, because we just hear one thing and then hear another. You know, Blanche goes to Congress, says, nothing to see here, there's no fund. President Trump comes out a few days later.
Calls it beautiful.
Says, love the fund. I would be very disappointed if it doesn't go through. And then you had amazing reporting last week in the Atlantic
on Thursday
that comes out and says, look, and we've talked to people inside and outside of this situation, and people are saying that the administration is going to do what it always tries to do, which is to play a shell game with the American people. You know, now you see it, now you don't. There's nothing to see here. Judge Brinkman was having none of that yesterday.
To your point, Skye, let's play the part of the interview that he ran out on with NBC News at Meet the Press, where Trump talks about and defends his fund.
I don't know what's going to happen with the weaponization fund. I love the idea. I think the weaponization fund is a great idea, and so do many other Republicans. You have to get it approved. If they get it approved, that's great. If they don't get it approved, I'd be disappointed. People have been destroyed by crooked politicians, and they should be reimbursed for that.
Ankush, the President of the United States is still, he is very good at implicitly letting his team know what he wants, yes. Right? Sometimes it's very explicit, but sometimes it's implicit, like that. I'd be disappointed if that happens. And if you disappoint me, you get fired, or you have to resign, or I find another job for you that's not as fun and elegant. And I will also point out that Todd Blanche has to figure out how to thread this needle. Because if they don't kill it, right, if it's actually not gone, his own nomination is in danger. Because you have Republican senators who say, if this exists, when it's time to vote for you on the floor, I will not vote for you as Attorney General of the United States.
Yeah, well, look, his nomination should remain in danger because he had the notion that this was a good idea in the first place and went up to Congress talking about what a great idea it was and that it was inappropriate. And it was not. It was never a good idea. It should never gotten off the ground. That alone, I think, should disqualify him, because if Tom Tillis is serious about saying that the Attorney General should not be someone who diminishes January 6th and Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, you probably should not elevate the man who led his criminal defense for those efforts.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I want Jonathan, you're exactly right. Brinkman is order for them to submit a declaration, highly, highly unusual. In another administration, a judge would take the government's representation in a brief. They would not require written declarations. And Judge Brinkema has a reputation for being a bit of a no-nonsense, to-the-point judge. So I think it was good for her to sort of make something very clear. But I want to just make one last point, if it's okay. The litigation is very important. The things that Sky and her organization is doing are very important. This will not end unless Congress passes a law to end it, because there will be other machinations that the administration can go through in order to make these payouts in ways that may not even become public. What needs to happen is that Congress should pass a law prohibiting these payments, including a provision that allows for their rescission if they happen despite the law, and for them to be clawed back in a future administration and imposing potential criminal penalties on any effort to run around the order that Sky's Group just obtained.
A law that Donald Trump will not sign, just to be clear. Donald Trump is not signing that law.
And I think that'll tell us everything we need to know, won't it, about whether they're really killing it.
Yeah.
Well, Eugene, I think that I disagree with the premise of your question.
Which question? Which
about
part?
Todd Blanche having to answer for this. That his confirmation is dependent on his ability to answer
But Tom
this.
Tillis said it.
But they all had the opportunity to pass an amendment that would have resolved this issue, and only a handful of them actually came out and decided to support that amendment. It was ultimately defeated. It was largely a Democratic effort. And now here we are. And it kind of makes me, I was wondering this last night, Sky, but I didn't want to. Sure. I wanted the opportunity when we had a little bit more time to sort of troubleshoot what was going on here. But all of these workarounds, I mean, it seems to me, right, the two people that they mention that they want to hold accountable for potential perjury are Scott Bessent and Todd Blanche. Is that right?
Yeah.
And there's another guy, too,
and the associate.
So then what if they decide to just move this project to a different cabinet official? I mean, are there other workarounds that you were kind of shooting the gaps on right now and legally preparing for?
Well, we're always legally preparing for any way they're going to try to skirt these things. But what Judge Brinkema did yesterday is more than just say you have to go submit this under oath to say the fund isn't moving forward. I mean, she was very clear. The order is very comprehensive. It says, and if you've done any transfers, if you've made any types of commitments, you need to rescind them. It says, it's not just that is the fund not moving forward today. Can you say that it will not ever move forward? Because plaintiffs stand to be harmed with that, with the threat that you're going to go into court and win one day, and then tomorrow they just, push out of their representation. So she is on to this. I think this is a larger trend we're seeing around federal judges right now across the country in many of our cases, where, maybe they were a little slow at first to really understand what this Department of Justice is doing, but a year and a half in, they get it. And they're very clear in these orders about how not to do it. So I think that her order is quite comprehensive, and what she is trying to say with the sworn statements is, look, we're a court. Like, we rely on facts and evidence. And right now, there are no facts or evidence that this fund is not moving forward. And at the same time, the DOJ comes in and says, the reason she shouldn't grant our client's court order is because they've discontinued the fund, but they're not willing to put any facts forward. And she was right to call that out.
So, Ankush, I'm just listening to Sky. I'm wondering, if the judge puts in all these stipulations, how can the judge hold Blanche, Woodward, and Bessent accountable if they flout her ruling, if they find some workaround? Is there an accountability mechanism, and how quickly can it move so that they can't just do it sort of like East Wing style? It's already done, so there's nothing that can be done to bring it back.
The judge does not have the tools available to prevent something like that from happening.
Oh.
Just want to be very clear about that. If there are efforts to disperse funds to some of these people secretly to settle claims under the Federal Tort Claims Act quietly outside of court, that may never be available to her to review. She may not ever have the power to review that. The case is about a particular case in controversy. She is ruling on that case of controversy. If there are other efforts to kind of make these payments, I'm sure Sky's Group will be out there trying to develop legal theories. But truly, I think, Jackie, the point that you made just a moment ago is very, very important, because the Republicans, and I think it was taken as a sign of weakness by the White House that the Republicans would not actually follow through on their rhetoric and shut it down. And it is worrisome to me that even now, in our second year, when we're talking about the YOLO caucus or whatever,
we are not talking about
right.
that.
No,
we decided that's fake.
Right, correct. That the rhetoric, the actions still do not
exactly.
their actions still do not match their rhetoric. Right? If you really want to shut this down, you can easily shut it down by passing a law, and you can do so in a way that prevents all of the workarounds.
Exactly.
That sounds like a column.